Hey friends, this is Marilyn from Tarot Clarity, and today is another viewer inspiration video. Somebody said something in the comment section and it prompted me to think that that would make a great video. So please always feel free to make comments. You know, I frequently will use your comments as a jumping point to do a video. And always, feel free to email me. I am very responsive to folks. My email is tarotclarity@gmail.com. It's really easy. Now, if you do contact me with a question or something like that, then please put something in the subject line, that says you're from, you're a viewer from YouTube or something, so I don't delete it, And also bear in mind that if you want a reading, that's done exclusively through my website at Tarot. It's a secure website, https://whatever, tarotclarity.com. So just bear that in mind. I don't accept readings through the email. But at any rate, the viewer's comment was on how the deck I used yesterday, the Great Parade, reminded them of the Bolognese deck Mondo. Now, there are several decks from Bologna. There's the I think the El Soldato, and there's also the Della Torre. I think they were all from Bologna, but I'm just going to use the El Mondo as the jumping point for this video. Now, the Bolognese, Tarocco Bolognese that I'm using, El Mondo, is the one that was published by Marco Benedetti. Now, I also want to point out before I get started, and I have a little cheat sheet that Ian Cumpstey, because the Great Parade was created by Ian Cumpstey, graciously included a cheat sheet for the two orders, right? We have the Marseille order, which we're accustomed to, but in Italy, in various regions, they varied the order of the cards depending on the region. And I put these in the Bolognese order. Why not? It doesn't hurt us every now and then to see things like the originators did. So I have put these cards in their order. Another thing that I want to point out before I get to it is that the number 2 through 5 card, the female pope, the empress, the emperor, and the pope, by 1725, and so we'll know that this is a 1725 deck, it began to just replace those characters with the 4 Moors for political reasons. So it wasn't just in other European countries that started to change those cards for political reasons. The Italians themselves also did. And then I guess anything else that I notice, I'll just mention as we go along. I think from 1750, that is when the cards came with an image on top and an image on bottom. I forget what that's actually called. The Piedmontese style. I think that became a thing after 1750. So we know that this El Mondo deck was at least 1725 when they incorporated the 4 Moors, but before 1750 when they would have, I think, given it, the style that we know as the Piedmontese style, where the head is on the top and bottom. I hope that made sense. So let me flip the camera and we'll get to it. One thing, I wanted to check another cheat sheet, this one put out by Marco, and I had my dates wrong. He said in this little cheat sheet, I'm paraphrasing, in 1725, the church ordered Bolognese printers to replace the 4 papi with the 4 Moors, which I got right, 1725 with the 4 Moors. By 1760, numbers started appearing on the trump cards. So we know that has to be before 1760 because there are no numbers on the trump cards. And then by 1770, that's when all Bolognese decks became double-headed. And I think that style, I could be wrong, but I think that style is called the Piedmontese. Very few single-headed decks that feature the Moors have survived from the period. So chances are really good that this deck definitely, the Mondo deck, is definitely securely placed in 1725 through 1760. So I just wanted to mention all that. Now, you may also ask, why weren't the Triumph cards ordered? Why didn't they have numbers on them? And I've mentioned it many times in my videos that the order varied from region to region. And I guess it was just that way for a long time until, according to what Marco has said here, and I have no reason not to believe him, that around 1760, the numbers started appearing, and so they made it more standard. However, despite the standardization with the numbers, I know that people still regionally played it however they wanted to, whatever orders they wanted. So here we have the Great Parade by Ian Cumpstey on the right and the Mondo on the left. So this is a good example to show how a deck could be an inspiration, but it's not being copied. We know that we can see the inspiration here because this Mondo fool is making music. He's got a drum and he's got a fife or a flute type of thing, a horn of some sort. And I don't see the donkey ears. So he, maybe based this aspect on another Italian deck, but we certainly have the inclusion of the fool as making music. And as inspiration, the different colored stockings could have come from another source. Here we have the trickster, as it's called. I put this over here so you can see it. We have an audience and we have children in the foreground. So he borrowed from that, didn't copy it exactly, but it seems to be the inspiration. He made other changes, and as I mentioned, it's likely that other decks would have also served as inspiration. But the reason I really like the Great Parade deck is because, Ian Cumpstey took his inspiration from the historic decks. Okay, now we do have the four Moors, and I'm not positive, to be honest, if I have them in the correct order. But when they were played, they probably confused a lot of people. And they were always 2 through 5, were always played with them each having the exact same value in the game. Now, I'm reasonably sure that I have this one and this one in the correct spots. And these two, I'm not exactly sure if I have these two in the right spots or if this one goes first and this one comes second. I don't know. So we have the four Moors in place of what we're used to seeing: the female Pope, the Empress, the Emperor, and the Pope. Now remember, I'm putting them in the order, the Bolognese order. So next we have the Love. It's just called Love. So here, interestingly, Cupid is blindfolded, and here he is not. And in the Mondo, we have a fountain, and there's an interesting detail there. Oh, his leg. Cupid's leg is in the font. Isn't that interesting? Well, that's curious. But apparently he took his inspiration, or he deviated from that. And I'm not saying that Ian Cumpstey did absolutely use the Mondo as inspiration, but when my viewer said that it was very similar, yeah, it is, and it is similar. And so I don't know if I ever did a video showing some of the inspiration cards for this deck. I may have way back when, but I don't remember, so it can't hurt to do them again. So we have the sword and the globe in the prince's hands with the horse and the chariot. Here he has wings, maybe the wings of Mercury or whatever the reference was. And here he's more like a prince. And we don't have anything in the corners there. But we do see the horses acknowledging one another in their glance, which is interesting. Okay, we have Temperance following the chariot, so it's a different order, of course. But she has the same head posture, kind of the same hair, except it's a little longer here. So it's very similar. Justice. And we see Fortitude as a column, which it often did in the earlier decks. Now you may notice, you may have already noticed and said, what are all those red dots about? And it seems that these red kind of dots are very usual in the Bolognese decks. I don't know if anyone really absolutely 100% knows what they're about. I used to think that maybe it was the glue. Maybe the glue was dotted on because, you know, there were several sheets. Remember, the back was folded over. That's the edge we see. That today, I think, you know, the tradition of having borders, right, I think came from the days of yore when they folded the backs over. So you can see the reproduction here, right? You can kind of see that. I mean, this is not a rivoltini, but I think you can see what I'm talking about. So I thought maybe it was just dabs of glue that they put in certain spots and, you know, matched it up. And maybe they didn't think in 500 years that anybody would be looking at the deck, so they didn't worry about the glue coming through. Some people say it might be mold, and some people think that it was absolutely a deliberate design. So I can't tell you with honesty or truth what the case is. About the only thing that these two have in common, because this seems to be nodding more to the Marseille style than the Italian, is that the wheels are both turning in the same direction. And here, they didn't call it the Hermit, they called it Time. And notice that we have the hourglass. It's not a lantern. And then we have a walking stick, which during the day could also serve as a timepiece. You put it in the ground and you could tell the time. Here, time is described differently as an elder. You know, there's a certain respect given to the elder, you know, as a virtue, age, wisdom. So it can tie in a little bit to that as well. And he has two walking sticks, which one of them could have been used as a timepiece. And you notice the column in the background as if, you know, as if to suggest strength. It's kind of interesting. Okay, now here with the card that we know as the Hanged Man, it's referenced by Ian Cumpstey as downfall. And many, 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 many cards look like this. So, you know, it's not necessary that the Mondo was the inspiration. This looks more like a TDM. So I think Ian Cumpstey used a few different references. I mean, this probably could be said that this is really a Italian-French kind of blend deck. I always thought that the Bolognese death card always kind of looked like he was heading a parade, you know. Like there's a parade, you know, he's in it. And the triumph card would have appeared, you know, that in the triumph of Plutarch, the parades, I think death was one of them that was in the parade. So in a way, we're not too far from seeing it as, you know, one of the parades of you know, celebrating Plutarch's triumph parade. I forget exactly what it was called. So this kind of, you know, it reminds me of maybe somebody who lived to know that was familiar with these parades, if not in person, then from word of mouth or from illustrations that were drawn in books. And this one looks more like a TDM source. So we have a similar thing going on here, don't we? And it is called Devil. We have the horns, we have the wings that are not virtuous. I think here he's sticking his tongue out, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure what's happening over there. But they have like these unusual feet, scales on his body. And we have pitchforks, right? This one is referenced as lightning. And, you know, I've mentioned it in many videos, and it's not just me. Lots of people, I think, have come to think that maybe it isn't so much the tower as it is some type of celestial event, such as thunder and lightning. Because in many cards, it seems as though when this card is represented, there's usually, whether there's not always a tower, but frequently there's some type of thing happening in the sky. We see no people here, which is interesting. In the Mondo, we do. And we have star. Very similar. Right? Very similar content. Moon, again, very similar content. The astronomers looking at the sky, the night sky. And then we have the sun, right? And we have the woman threading in the daylight, because that's probably when women would have done it. But we do know that in other decks, I think when it migrated to France, it had the woman doing her thread work or her spinning under the moon, which could have been a deliberate choice or could have been something that they got wrong. But of course, that was maybe like in decks like the Vieille, that kind of thing. So it was an early French deck, not in the Marseille style. And here we have the world card. Now it's quite different, but it's similar in the sense that we feature a town, right, in a circle. Now this is probably a reference again to Mercury or Hermes, or, you know, I'm guessing. Could even be Apollo, maybe. But I think not. I think it's not Apollo. I think it's more like Mercury, because those look more like wings of Mercury. But we see a circle with quadrants, like night and day, and a town, and I'm not sure what that is, maybe the country. But I really do like world cards that don't have a central figure within a wreath, and I don't like it at all. Now remember, the world card came before the triumph, or the angel. I think they called this card the angel card, because you accomplish things in life. This card was like a card of accomplishment, right? this is what you accomplish in life, and then this is what happens after you finished your life. I also failed to mention that notice the Bolognese decks. You know you have a Bolognese deck if you have a long, thin format, almost like a bookmark. And Ian Cumpstey didn't, copy that feature physically. So this is what happens after you die, right? You're called upon to face what you've done and account for yourself. And this is very similar. This is a very similar card. Okay, now I think you'll see that with the pip cards, we have simplification. And again, we have, I'm missing the 2. We have to see where that pops up. I noticed that when I was, I probably have it in another Ian Cumpstey deck. That's probably what happened, because I probably at some point compared Ian Cumpstey decks with one to the other, and I probably put it in the wrong deck, so I have to check. But we have a much simpler Ace of Swords here. This one from Bologna is much more elaborate. And the hand comes from the opposite directions, and there's a crown here. Regrettably, I don't know where the 2 is for the Ian Cumpstey, but I imagine that it's basically the same format. Here we have the 3. And you see that there's some embellishment like we might have seen in TDM. So we have other inspiration thrown in, I think. But I think the Great Parade is a real nice nod to a variety of the historic decks. You see, they share that little motif. And then we have a little extra motif there. I think this is the 7. Now, we were talking yesterday about how, or the day before, I'm not even sure, it kind of gets to be a blur, how the French incorporated the numbers, right, in their cards from the 1600s. And here we have cards from the 1700s, and we still don't see the numbers. Now, as I mentioned in this little descriptor paper that Marco shared in the deck, he said the numbers didn't appear until 1760. So a full, it sounds like 100 years after the French incorporated the numbers on the pip cards, that's when maybe the Italians started doing it too. But like I mentioned when I did that other video, the French found a need to say, hey, this is really confusing. You're playing a game of cards. You don't maybe have time to count them, and you could be confused easily. And so they incorporated the numbers. But with this one being a more modern, more easily seen presentation of the arrangement of the swords, it's easier to say 3 and 3, 6, 7. Okay, it's a 7. But still, it's a lot of extra work when you're playing a game of cards. So I can understand why the French said, let's put some numbers in these things. And maybe the Italians just came to that on their own as well. In the Bologna, it didn't happen until 1760, according to Marco's paper. But we see we have the similar floral motif. I hope the 2 of Swords pops up someplace. I'd be really sad to think I lost it. I didn't. It's in this room somewhere. Okay, now we have the quartz. They're not that similar. Really, there's not a whole lot of similarity, except that that's who the characters are. Well, we have a similar head tilt. And once again, there's a simplification with the ace. Here we have birds. Oh, but you'll see we have a similar arrangement. So the cups might not be the same color, but their form is very similar and their arrangement on the card is very similar. I apologize for the background noise. My husband can't resist making noise right outside my door. So we see the Great Parade really does borrow from the Bolognese formatting of the arrangement of the pips on the cards. And as I mentioned, they're more or less the same shape so far. Wow, there's a little distance between these two. And we deviate when we get to the 10. So we have two groups of 5 here. And here, there's a nod to the TDM, where the cup, the 10th cup, is laid on its side. Ah, there it is. There's the 2 of Swords. So yes, it is very similar to the other 2 of Swords. I don't have to go back. You know what? I do want to go back because I want to see if there was a flower in there. No, no flower. So again, a little bit of a nod maybe to the Marseille deck. And I can't speak for Ian Cumpstey or what he had in mind when he created this deck. I'm just looking at the deck as a person who's just looking at 2 decks and comparing them and just coming up with my own thoughts. That doesn't necessarily mean. But I do think that he was thinking of some of the Italian decks for sure. And maybe this one in particular. Now look at that. She's got some kind of thing dangling. In both of them, she's got something in her hand. Isn't that interesting? Now, this is like my boyfriend card, right? This is the Valet or the Page of Cups. But in the Bolognese and some of the Italian decks, the female of the page court, the page in the court was sometimes a female because they would have a female page, and then they would have of the other suits. You'll see it was a male page or valet. So the I guess it would be seen the passive suits. It was a woman, so it would be cups and coins. And if I don't mention it when we get to coins, you should see it in the page of coins. And in the other suits that are weapons or phallic, right? The phallic suits, such as the swords and the batons, we'll see a male. So this is the equivalent of my boyfriend. For those of you who've been with me long enough, you know what I'm referring to. And she still has something. So is it for her head or is it for the chalice? Now this deck, which is the older, obviously, she has a headpiece on. So I don't know. Is this for the chalice? It's not a lid. It's a covering of sorts. So it's curious. It's very curious. Not really too much in common except for going in the same direction, the same hand gesture, and the cup is roughly the same shape. But then here you see we have what's going on in some TDM decks. The Queen. If she had something in her hand here, It's not there. They have the same hand gestures, although the Mondo queen is outdoors. Again, the king, we have similar hand gestures. Very similar. Tilt of the head. Okay, again, a simplification of the ace, not quite as elaborate for the ace of batons. And the batons are a bit different. I think to make it easier, more easily distinguished from the swords, right? Because this baton, you know, has a pointed end. So I think very easily, you know, you're playing a card game and people could have their brain trick them into thinking that's a sword or something. And just like the way today, so many people sometimes will, you know, confuse the batons for the swords. Even if they know better, sometimes our brain just tricks us. I know mine does. I can definitely see, you know, the confusion if you're playing cards and you have to deal with this. And sometimes some of the decks, they really screwed it up, you know, where it's, I don't know how they get like, you know, 8 or 9, you know, batons, you know. So I think there really was a need to start putting numbers on the cards. So we have 8. Notice we have the 9 one that's in the center. And then we have a vertical and a horizontal to make the 10. I'm so glad I found the 2. I was starting to think I would have to go through all my decks to find where I put that 2. So when I do videos with multiple decks out, sometimes it gets confusing. Okay, so we don't have the same thing going on. Different clothes, similar posture, but here we have Rononia Dorset, Dacet, I guess it's Italian. Regrettably, I do not speak Italian. I know the little words and whispers that my mother and her sisters used to use. Like, you know, I have phrases, Italian expressions, Italian slang. I got lots of that, but I don't speak proper Italian. Now here we have the Knight of Batons going in one direction as we see in other cards, but he's looking. He's looking. His horse and he have been distracted and they're looking this way, although their momentum is going forward. That's interesting. Very similarity between the queens, except for the headpiece. And there's no shield. And this one's outdoors, this one's indoors. Let's see. But not the same. Now here we see a commonality with the horse and, the hare and the dog on the coin, the ace of coins. But the coin here is simplified. But see, we do see the inspiration, don't we? And again, with the similar arrangement of the pips on the cards. Now we have this, like, just make a liar out of me there, Ian. Here we have a different one. But to keep them uniform, because the format is different, this, you know, it's not a long, we don't have a long, thin bookmark kind of shape as we do in the Bolognese. So it's possible he felt it would have been too cramped to do that on this format. So he changed it, or he just used another arrangement as inspiration. Here we have the 5s. And this is the last suit. So if you hang out just for probably another couple, a minute or two, you never know what I say at the end. Sometimes I come up with something good. Okay, here we have 2, 4, 6, 7, quite different. 8. 9. And 10. And the page, as I mentioned when we got to the cups, the page on the passive suits are females, and the other pages would have been gentlemen, but I didn't comment when we got, see the boys, so they're guys. Something similar. The head gesture of both the knight and the horse, and the leg gestures on the horse are very similar. And they're both glancing at their coin as like the Knight of Batons, their heads are facing one direction, but the momentum is going in another. And that could be a very useful thing when you're doing a reading. Maybe your head and heart are thinking of one thing. In this case, it would be your head, maybe, right? You have your goal on something in this direction, but you're going in the wrong direction. That could actually be, you read the deck. Okay, we have the queens, quite different, looking in opposite directions. I could see why somebody might get confused and think that's the Queen of Batons, but really, if there's a coin anywhere in the image, then it's going to be a coin and not a baton. But I can see somebody making that error. And then the king. And they put 3 coins here just to make sure you knew it was the King of Coins. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me flip the camera. I know many of you come to this channel to see deck comparisons or to see new decks. And as I've mentioned a few times, I'm not in a position now with things being what they are to just not carelessly, but to just without concern purchase new decks. I got to be careful now, but it's okay because it's a great opportunity to review the decks I have and to re-expose you to them, because I have many new subscribers who haven't seen all my videos, and maybe you don't want to go back. And I got like 600 videos or close to it, so I've shown a lot of decks on this channel, but it's not a bad idea to reacquaint you with some of these decks. And I'm not repeating any videos that I already have. I don't think that I ever showed these two side by side. I'm sure I didn't. So at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep your ideas and keep your ideas coming. Don't hesitate to contact me. I'm always happy to answer a question if I know it, or to give you my thoughts. And I bear in mind, it's just because I say something doesn't mean it's gospel. It just means my own observation, the things that I've observed from looking at so many decks. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, and be calm. Oh, be kind. Be calm too, though.